So today, this is episode 14 of Unplanned with Phil Bland, and today I'm with Paul Walker. I've wanted to speak to Paul on the show for a little while because he's had a super exciting journey building up Walker Slater. He's actually in partnership with Mark Hogarth and Harris Tweed Hebrides that I had on one of the earlier shows. So I wanted to talk to Paul about, opening up retail stores, why they decided to work with Harris Tweed, and some of his thoughts on design and fashion. So thanks for being with me, Paul.
Yeah, it's very nice to be here. Thanks, Phil.
Awesome. So I guess I kind of wanted to kick off with this is also about kind of documentation more than anything. I want to kind of understand, ask people how they're feeling at this present moment. We're in an unprecedented time, as everyone's saying. It's quite a crazy time for business, quite a crazy time for people's personal lives. So I guess just to start off, how are you doing? How are you coping?
Well, I think I'm doing okay, and then some days I'm not. It's like it surprises me when I'm not, but generally I've just been very busy. I think it's because we've got multiple sites and they're all empty. There's a lot of scope to go in and look at things and try and sort of understand where you can make things better, and that's beyond just the painting, the decorating, and the cleaning and tidying. There's a lot there to be done, but you've got to be pretty self-motivated to want to keep doing it. And sometimes I think it catches up on you, the lack of people, lack of feedback. But on the whole, I'm really feeling fairly positive. Much better today than perhaps Monday. Monday wasn't a great day, and then today's fine. So it is day to day.
Yeah. And how are you kind of keeping the team together at this time, and kind of culturally?
There's a bit of banter. There's a bit of contact, and obviously our online is open, and there's a fair amount happening with social. I think, the people that have been doing that have been doing a great job. Shout out to Izzy, and she's people that have actually had to think about how to engage people who really, themselves are maybe not doing that much, and it is tricky, but I believe we've done a reasonable job on that.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's one of these periods in time that we'll probably all look back on and think, how we'll reflect on for a while. So one of the things about doing this show has been quite interesting to kind of get people's perspectives from different kind of walks and lives and of life and things. So yeah, I guess, you've had a super interesting journey building up some of the stores and designing your own fashion for men's and women's wear, and then opening in London and things too. But I wanted to take it kind of right back to I guess, how you kind of decided that you wanted to, maybe leaving university. What was the thinking? A lot of people leave to go and start a career, to join a big company. What was it about entrepreneurship or fashion or starting your own company that excited you?
It just seemed like a really logical thing to do at the time. It was strange. I'd been studying in Dundee, and I'd learned to ski, and I'd been out working out in the ski resorts, and there I'd met some friends who'd basically shown the way a bit, sort of selling sweatshirts out of bags and ski resorts, to people who were working there. And this whole idea, the penny drop, that suddenly, you can make an income from selling clothing. And clothing was something I've been interested in for a long time. I'd been to art college to do fine art. Didn't really work out. Ended up working a lot, saving money, and then traveling off to India, and spent 7-8 weeks in India. Came back, and basically the place that would have me was Dundee. They were the only one. Thank you, Dundee. It was great. I'd never been to Scotland, so ended up 84 coming up to Dundee, and met some great people. One of which was a really good skier, and she kind of got me in that way of the mountains at Glen Shee, and just from that I became really wanting to spend more time in the mountains, and ended up going out to one of the resorts and managing to get a job out there for sort of in between terms, you know, so you made one term shorter and the other term shorter as well, and got a longer holiday. But yeah, when I was out there, I just really enjoyed the whole thing of, you know, seeing people wearing interesting stuff, and it was fun. And there I partnered up with Francis Slater, who has a really good line, and that's when Walker Slater kind of came into being. And
how did that partnership come together? Like, a lot of people struggle with.
It came together through a mutual friend who just said, you know, if you're looking for somebody to do really nice designs in terms of drawings and things like that, Frances is great, and she was up for it. And basically we ended up then taking the business forward. She was going to do a postgraduate at the Royal College. It didn't kind of work out for her, and it was like the whole thing sort of just gelled together. And I had a couple of friends who were designing and making snowboards, and they were called Acid Snow, and they were a great couple of guys. And you know, we teamed up with them really, and took over an old bar up in the Highlands. And the Highlands was a great choice because, of course, in those days you had the Highlands and Islands Development Board, the HIDB, who were very happy to see young people move in and try and set up a business in a remote, difficult area, which Lagan certainly was. So, you know, we ended up there. We bought some equipment, printing equipment, because our business in those days was very print-based. You know, it was about designs going onto T-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, linings. You know, it was that kind of thing. And that was 89, so late 80s, early 90s. That was what we did. And then it came to a stage where basically we had a cow buyer full of too much stock, and it was like, oh, you know, what are we going to do with all this? And that's where the logicality of retailing sort of came in. And then back to Francis's home turf of Edinburgh, where we opened our first store, Odd One Out.
Right, got it.
So that's how it kind of worked like that. But while we were up in the Highlands, of course, I became very acquainted with tweed, and you know, there was a lot of gamekeepers looking for sorry, there's somebody just calling in there.
No way.
A lot of gamekeepers looking for things to be done, and you know, tweed was what was required. So I started working with the fabric, and that's where the start with Harris Tweed came in, actually. You know, all those years ago, before the industry was even relaunched.
I get just to kind of go on to the kind of your mentality at the time. A lot of people, you know, look at their friends going into, you know, normal careers, or they've got a planned structure of which direction they're heading in. And something I've kind of wanted to explore in this show is around how people follow their curiosity, and it might not be planned out in advance. So I bet they kind of, you know, find an opportunity and then take it. So, like, were you ever tempted to kind of follow some of the same paths that other people maybe in your circles were following? And what was your thought process around just kind of going off and following your curiosity?
No, I think I knew that I wanted to do something on my own, and I knew that I was really young, and it was probably, you know, a little ambitious to do it. But we were able to get some funding from a bank, you know, with the personal guarantee, and you know, it was like that concentrates the mind rather. So just sort of got on with it, and just really liked the product as well. And it was the day of, you know, it was all linked back to an old camper van. It was quite loose and, you know, pretty happy-go-lucky, but at the same time, it had a really raw, good energy with it. And the products that we were making down in Leicester at the time. And it was a good manufacturer. The products were nice, and you know, they had a difference to them. So much so, actually, I remember when we were applying for the Princess Youth Business Trust, you know, one of the people on the board was the manager of the Marks and Spencers, you know, who really couldn't get his head around why you could see the stitching of the label through the garment, but that was part of the look. And you were like, you know, you kind of knew that you're onto a sort of non-corporate direction, which was what we wanted, what I wanted, and I think that was what drove us forward. Yeah.
And where did you get the inspiration for doing those sort of things that were kind of a little bit not the norm and people couldn't necessarily understand?
Surfing, skiing, and that general sort of outdoors, sort of happy-go-lucky kind of way. It wasn't at the time. It wasn't really high fashion that we were. Although, funnily enough, we came back into Glasgow and worked with a number of really interesting people there, and it became a lot more fashion.
Nice. So I guess moving to you, you started selling. How did you start selling? I mean, did you start with a retail store, or like were you just selling to friends? Like, how did you find your first customers?
I've lost your contact a bit.
Can you see me? Hello?
Hello. I can't hear you there.
Oh, you can't hear me?
I can hear you very softly, but not like.
Oh.
Hang on, that's maybe better. Right, yeah, that's better. Somebody phoned again.
One of the big things that people think that they need to do when setting up a company is like, build a brand or create a website or, do a lot of kind of things that don't involve just making money from the start. So to keep, the money coming or keep the bills paid and things, how did you start thinking about getting your first customers? Did you open a retail store? I mean, I guess it was kind of early stages of the internet.
No, it was about selling to other stores. It was very much about selling to other stores as a mark, and that was the way forward.
Yeah.
So it's seasonal based. You present the season, and then you try and deliver it. 8-12 weeks later, which involved driving all over the place. I mean, all over the country, all over Europe. We were one of the first people to work with clothes that change color with heat, for instance, and that was quite an interesting print technique and opened a few doors, but we didn't really know what to do with it. And I think that was one of the major sort of problems. It's like you can have some ideas, but you've got to produce a coherent product list, basically, that makes sense to the buyers and the customers.
So then at what point did you think we need to go direct to the customers? I think
when we had too much stock, and I think when the recession of probably 92, that there was a dip in, and basically wholesale was very difficult because you were the path of least resistance, in the sense that if somebody wanted to send something back, they were far more likely to do it with a small company than to one of their major suppliers like Diesel or whoever else they were buying. So it was a way of. It was that realization that basically the only way to really ensure that you're getting your product out there was to sell it to the direct end customer, and that's where retail came in.
And do you think about the retail space as like part of the product, like when you were deciding to open the store?
Very much.
How do you imagine the whole concept as a whole? What's your thoughts on product as a kind of marketing and branding strategy as well?
Yeah, I think you've got to tell the story. You've got to tell the story of why the product's relevant, why you're interested in the product, and what it fits with. So, the retail environment's very important.
Nice. So, how did that play out? Like, what were some of the decisions that you made with Walker Slater?
Well, it evolved. I mean, it's like everything. It did change over time. I mean, what we opened when we first started with Odd One Out very much was more streetwear. We were still into that sort of street snow, and it wasn't until I became really sure that I wanted to do tailoring that the whole thing divided. And actually, that's really Walker Slater kicked off where Odd One Out left, I suppose, in the sense that then it became an area where I was solely responsible for the way it looked, and then it became a little bit more classic in the sense it had that nod to heritage. And that's where the tailoring and it smartened itself up a little bit.
And why did you? I always think it's amazing the kind of quality of the products that your designers make, but it kind of starts with the source of the material, and then it comes into the design and the cut of the suits and things. But first of all, how did you decide that you wanted to make a kind of bet on the Harris tweed rather than, you know, using other materials.
Well, it wasn't just Harris tweed. We worked with a lot of tweeds, you know, the borders tweed and the lightweight tweeds. Those were things that really caught my interest first of all, because they were so wearable, and nobody was doing anything with it in terms of suiting. You know, I think that was something that was very different. That sort of lightweight tweed suit that, you know, was really wearable during many times of the year. Harris tweed was just a natural. I mean, the depth of color in Harris tweed, the textures. You know, it's a great fabric to work with. So obviously you wouldn't ignore it, but it wasn't the only thing.
Nice. So did you at this stage, you're probably needing to like think about building up your team and finding people to join you and kind of selling to customers at the store, finding the right designers and things. How did you think about creating the culture of Harris Tweed and building up the team of people?
I think you know, you do it with the people that are interested in what you're doing. That's the first thing. I think you need to have people that are passionate about it, like you are. That's a big thing.
And how do you assess it? Like, how do you find that out about somebody?
It's more of a feeling. I think it's just from talking and just, you know, the actions that people take when they're in the workplace or outside of the workplace. I mean, you kind of live and breathe it. It's not something that just you come in at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock or whatever time it is and, you know, leave at the end of the day. It's you know, it goes into a pub, or in the early days the pub was a big thing. I mean, that was the Bow Bar was probably getting most of our profits at those days. You know, it's just but at the same time it was really important because it was a place where you could talk about things and, you know, try and encapsulate what you're aiming to do, and, you know, it made a difference. And
do you think you recruited? Was that where you recruited some of the early people to join?
Yeah, very much. You know, I think that you know, we've had some great people to work alongside, and they've all been part of that journey. And yeah, the other thing is you've got to see what people's own passions are. Some people are really into, you know, the product and designing. Some people want to make the store look good. Other people are more about the customer journey. You know, there are people that are more interested in, you know, some of the customer journey guys. You think, well, you know, he's been talking to that chap for ages, you know, but actually it's the relationship with the customer, and you know, I think you kind of, it all grows on you over time.
And then I guess it's finding unique talents with individuals and finding out what they'd specifically be good at with helping you, and then trying to find the right role for them rather than necessarily coming up with a role.
But when it's a small business, you've got to do so many of the roles, you know. It's like that's part of the problem. I think you've got to, you help and cover each other when, you know, when it's right to. But at the end of the day, you'll find that some people are much stronger at certain things than other things, and that's just the way it goes, and you have to work around them.
And what do you think that you were like the strongest at the start, and how's your job kind of
production?
changed?
It's always been design and production, finding value and trying to find something that actually is different on the market, find something that is not just generic, and make that into a reality. And often the problem is, if you're slightly indecisive, you maybe go, oh, maybe 2-3 colors too many, you know, in a range. It's like trying to pare it back is actually very difficult. That's the bit I probably find most difficult. But I'm getting better.
Yeah. I remember a quote. It was like, you know, focus is not about saying yes, it's about saying no.
Oh, very much.
It's about deciding what not to do and what is the most important. So I guess what's most important for Harris Tweed, like what are the specific, like the designs and things that you think are the kind of signature aspects of what make Walker Slater you know, successful?
Well, we've always called it carelessly elegant. You know, it's a slightly understated look. It's not too tied up. I mean, there are people that are very smart and they will dress in our clothing and look amazingly smart. But Walker Slater is also about just allowing yourself to be, you know, putting the clothing on, and it doesn't wear you, you wear it. And, you know, it's comfortable, but at the same time it's quality, and you know, it looks good. It's got a certain look to it. A lot of people that wear WS recognize other people that wear it, and that's interesting. Oh, is that a Walker Slater suit? And you're like, you know, it's really, you know, that's quite a buzz actually.
And then like something I've kind of thought as, you know, it's been exciting about, you know, the tweed suit and with Walker Slater is like the making a kind of contemporary twist on something that's a heritage thing. So how do you maybe in your product and your marketing and branding and think about trying to access you know, younger generations?
Well, it's through the cut as well, isn't it? It's about what you do with the material, you know, and the type of fabrics that you choose. I mean, if you choose very bright, big, bold checks, you know, they sort of, to me, that's like going down a road that's very different to the sort of things that we do. Although, you know, some people think that's terribly smart, and the sort of hunting, shooting, you know, that in that world, it is really relevant, but it's not the area that we've chosen to focus on. Ours is much more subtle. Yes. And you know, we use colors and textures and patterns that are just not necessarily obvious, and yet at the same time they're not overbearing and gaudy. You know, they kind of fit together and they tell a coherent story.
Can you think of any things that you have maybe thought that you wanted to do that you've said no to, or you've explored but then decided actually that's not what we're about?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Rainwear, I have a perpetual sort of relationship like that with. I think that's probably not quite finding the right fabric for the rainwear that is natural enough, but still has a function to it. You know, if you go too far down in one direction, it ends up looking, you know, like nylon and, you know, really man-made. And you're like, oh, that's not what I want at all. So, you know, rainwear has always been a bit of a struggle. Zips is another one, actually. We struggle with zips a bit, you know, because we're very button focused, you know, zips in knitwear, zips in jackets. It can be a bit tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, it's trying to marry that kind of quality with of product with the, you know, the heritage of the tweed, but getting the right kind of pieces to piece it all together.
It's got to have a sympathy to the heritage of the product, otherwise it becomes at odds with the interiors of the stores as well. Yeah, you know, the whole thing's got to kind of work together.
Yeah. And then I guess I kind of wanted to switch from product to talking about how you think about marketing in this new world that we're in and building a brand with technology. What are your thoughts on social media? Are you kind of using some of the platforms out there to get the word out?
Well, I'm not personally, but we are, yeah, definitely. And I think we you know, the people that do it do a good job. It's not easy, but it's massively important. It builds a community, and I think that's something that we've found out, that community really does matter, and you know, we believe in that. So we try and give more, but it comes back down to the positioning, doesn't it? How you position it, and you know, the 4 Ps or whatever they say in marketing. Is that right?
No, 4 Ps.
They say price, position, product, and promotion, don't they? Yeah. So your product in itself determines partly where your market's going to be. You know, and then you obviously price it in a way that you think is right for what you want it to be. You know, you're not trying to compete with Burberry. You're trying to be somewhere that's real, but it's maybe not mass market. You know, so it's like it's got that artisanal feel to it. And you know, the promotion, I suppose social media is definitely one of those avenues that you can get your message out there.
Nice. Yeah, and then I guess it's working now. It seems to be, I mean, obviously in current environment, I know things are crazy at the moment, but once you've got something that kind of identified the market. There's kind of product market fit in a sense. It seems like people, want the designs and the clothes that you make.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're relevant. I mean, I think you have to be relevant. If you're not relevant, what's the point?
So then at that point, people, how do you think about scaling up the business now? I know that you've been opening shops, but then focusing on e-commerce.
Well, I think you've got to be careful for what you wish for. It's like if you become too big, you'll become another one of these larger brands that, becomes more. It's more to do with the business than it is to do with the ethos of the brand.
Yeah.
We work with small manufacturers. We work with small mills. We don't do big amounts of clothing and the styles that we produce. You're not going to bump into people wearing the same thing. That all matters, and it's and at the same time you've got that contradiction where you need to keep the freshness as well. So you've got to keep moving it along. I think that we're a good size. We could be bigger, but at the same time I think we need to get a lot of things in place in terms of photography and imagery, the way that we present online. I think our retail side's very good, but I think that we've still got quite a lot of work to do on those areas.
I know. Do you have this is obviously your main focus, but are you curious about other things? Have you ever been somebody that likes to have lots of plates spinning at the same time?
No, not really. No. I like clothes. I like what we do with the clothing and designing that and keeping that. That's enough. There's enough personal interest, in terms of antiques and painting artwork or going out fishing, whatever it is, walking in the hills. There's a lot of things I like doing, but when it comes to work, buildings. I like doing up buildings. I must say that's been really fun with the shops. Taking on old buildings, renovating them, getting them looking how you want them to, then putting in the pictures, the antiques, the whole. That's been really, really good. Nice. And the new store in Covent Garden, particularly, because that was a difficult space. I didn't realise how difficult it was when I took it on. I probably wouldn't have taken it on if I had. It was basically a big space, and there was not even a toilet in there. There was no plumbing, electrics, or anything, and it was a new space. They'd sort of combined two old shops together and put the frontage back. It was a really good space, but God, that was a lot of trying to just decide on everything for it. That was quite daunting and expensive. But saying that, it does look really good, and I think a lot of people have said it's the best look that we've done so far. So that's nice, and seeing it in other places like Tokyo where we've got a store. That's great. Seeing that cabinet that we've designed with all the props, and it's very us, and it's there sitting in the middle of Jingyumai, and it's like, wow, that's great.
What was the thinking behind Tokyo? And are you thinking about any other countries that you'd like to kind of expand the brand into?
Tokyo was it was a good opportunity. It was it's usually about people. With Tokyo, it was about the people. I really like the people, like the idea, and thought, let's give it a go. It's a big market, and also I think it's one of those markets. If you get it right, it can really filter you back the right way with product. In the sense, I think they're a very discerning market, so they make you work harder in terms of making things better, and I think that's healthy.
Yeah, there was the story about the production line for cars, and Youpill whenever there's anything wrong with the product, somebody pulls the stop button and everybody has to stop until that thing is fixed. Right. And you also have to kind of go back and fix things at root. So like if a customer is complaining about a specific product, rather than just fixing that particular piece, quite often there's issues further back in the supply chain, and
they're not looking for the quick fix. They want to know why it happened.
Yeah, and asking like 3 questions backwards. Okay, then
that makes sense. And there are challenges. Their fits are very different to ours. So you do have to adapt products if you want it to be successful in other markets. That was something that was a bit of a realization, which we've started to do pretty effectively. The next thing is the Japanese website, which is another you know, websites, you mentioned them earlier, but they're a very big driving force towards what your business does. You know, it's often the first point that somebody touches with you in terms of sees the brand, and you know, from there they might, oh, you know, so that's very important.
I guess the one other thing that I was interested in exploring was it's never plain sailing, the journey of building a business. Have there been any, you know, and you've been in business for a long time and it's been building up, you know, or quite organically. So have there been any moments where, you know, you've come through it and it was like the valley of the shadows, you were, you know, very worried that about the business, but ultimately by persevering and just,
well, I think the opening of the first store in Edinburgh, you know, moving from Lagan to Edinburgh was quite a big one, because I think by that time we'd sort of filled up the overdraft and we got too much stock. So it was very important that we did that right. I think that it also, funnily enough, it probably was the thing that made me change direction as well, in the sense that once I'd done that, I'm like, well, I don't really want to do that again. Let's try. And by then I'd started driving around the borders. I'd seen a lot of tweed mills, and obviously I've been up in the Highlands and seen the way that tweed was used up there. And that's where Walker Slater as a brand really emerged, you know, because it came out of almost like another business, if you like. It was like another time.
Nice.
You know, so we're perhaps, although we're 30 years old, probably the first 4 or 5 years was just learning to try and, you know, sort of operate in a business-like way, if you like, and survive.
This has been awesome, Paul.
Well,
anything else you wanted to kind of talk about about the brand, or like plans for the future? Anything else you wanted to discuss before?
No, we're just really looking forward to seeing people back in the stores, seeing the stores open, seeing our colleagues back. You know, we do miss out. I mean, we're 58 people, and it's funny not having, you know, just nobody's around. It's very odd.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll re-emerge, and you know, the world will start spinning again.
I guess I'm super grateful that you're just not quite so busy at the moment, that we've had this opportunity to spend a little bit of time.
No, it's very nice. Thanks for
looking back.
the time.
All right, Paul, thanks so much, and
Okay.
and talk to you soon.
Yeah, cheerio.
Bye.